Caitlin, approximately how many times did you check Jennifer Connelly's age in the theater?
I only checked twice. But then when I went to open my phone at the end, it was just zoomed in. And all it said was 51 years.
Incredible. Hello everybody, happy Friday and welcome to the Ride Home podcast. My name is Abby.
Hey guys, I'm Caitlin.
So we actually are not on the ride home. I just want to be very upfront about it right now because I forgot the SD card for our recorder. So here we are in our house. Apologies for the misnomer, but I felt like we had to be transparent about that.
For sure. So we didn't make it on the ride home. We're just home now.
We're just home. So this is
home.
The home.
Yeah. The home podcast.
The home podcast.
The We're Home podcast.
Yeah. So we got out a little bit ago from Top Gun Maverick, which had you ever seen the original before?
No, not until
Never.
we watched it.
Okay.
This weekend.
So this weekend I felt like we had to do a little bit of homework and we put on Top Gun, and I personally had not seen it since I was I want to say 13 or 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And watching it back, I don't think I was allowed to see it. I think it was something that I maybe watched at a cousin's house
In a basement, for sure.
Yeah, definitely basement VHS. The old school incognito mode was watching something in the basement.
Yes, 100%.
And you always had the return channel set so that you could flip back to a wholesome station while you were watching a movie or show that you weren't allowed to watch.
Yes.
So we did watch the original this weekend. What were your thoughts, just very briefly, on the original?
I definitely understand why it's a classic.
Mm-hmm.
Why it's kind of a cult classic.
Yeah.
But, not much of a film there as far as the plot goes, as far as a storyline or character development goes.
Right.
It was just kind of cool, planes and cool guys in the Navy.
It was the straightest gay movie I've ever seen, also.
Yes.
It was, very clearly, a straight man's dream. Fuck yeah, planes, blah, but, also had, the gayest scenes I've ever seen.
Lots of gay undertones.
Lots of gay undertones. But I agree. I think overall it was lacking in quite a few departments. Mm-hmm. But overall, definitely a classic.
Yeah.
And also, I would say, a must-watch before you see this movie.
Yes.
There are some sequels that you can kind of tap into and be I haven't seen the original, but you can catch up on. This is not one I think that you can just go into, or else you're going to lose the heart of this movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
So what were your initial thoughts? Just credits roll, Lady Gaga screaming. What were you feeling in that moment?
That was one of the sickest fucking movies I've ever seen.
It really was. It was crazy.
It took a little bit for it to get crazy.
Yeah.
But once it got crazy, it just didn't stop being crazy.
Right.
And I'm not kidding when I say I was literally on the edge of my seat.
She actually shifted her entire body to the edge of the seat at one point in the movie.
Yes, and I had both hands on my face.
Mm-hmm.
My head in my hands just stuck to the screen.
So just some background information before we dive in is, if you have seen Top Gun, you're going to understand all these names and characters. If you haven't, I apologize, just go watch Top Gun. So Pete, or Maverick, is kind of still himself. He disobeys rules, he gets in trouble, and because he has gotten in trouble for so many times in his 30-year career, they make it known at the beginning that he should be an admiral by now, but he's still a captain. He's kind of washed up.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
He is.
And
he's kind of okay with it.
Yeah, and he doesn't have a wife, he lives in a hangar with his plane and
of course,
his memorial to Goose. And basically he gets called to Top Gun, where he came from, started it
out.
all. Yeah.
Yep.
And his mission is to train a group of young fighters to basically accomplish a near impossible mission.
Mm-hmm.
So part of that young group of fighters happens to be his deceased wingman Goose's son, whose call name is Rooster, played by none other than one of Caitlin's celebrity crushes.
Yes, sir. Mr. Miles Teller.
Which we joke all the time about how Caitlin, for some reason, has a crush on every asshole in Hollywood. Like, every time she's like, "Ooh, I think he's so cute." I'm like, you know he's like a dick, right?
And, like, every time I say that I'm attracted to a celebrity, I'm just waiting to find out that he's an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
Because it always happens.
It's like a 90% probability that somebody that you're attracted to ends up being a jerk.
Yes.
Yeah. You have a bad track record.
I do.
What does that say about me?
But I don't think it applies to you.
It doesn't. Good.
No. Yeah, you're the 10%.
There we go.
You're in
that
the 10%.
Me feel great.
Yeah. That's special for you.
I do feel special. So, yeah, I think the beginning of the movie had a wonderful credit scene.
Yes.
That was just basically ripped from the original.
Yeah, it was almost like shot for shot.
Almost shot for shot. May have been shot for shot.
Yeah.
I'm not like so familiar with it that, you know.
It looked very shot for shot.
Looked very shot for shot, and Danger Zone came kicking in.
It was just like, fuck yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
It was just like, all right.
Now, I will say that probably my only criticism with this movie, and I'm going to say that, I think it was I might have some more.
Your main criticism.
I get a little critical sometimes.
You do.
My main criticism with this movie is that I think it could have tipped the hat to the original for a much shorter period of time.
Yes.
But it tipped the hat to the original for the first full half of the movie.
Act, yeah.
There's basically a new Iceman, like there's a new cool guy pilot, and like, you know, Rooster, who is Goose's son, basically is the same character as Maverick.
Right.
They have the same relationship. They think they're better than each other. They have that, you know, they're playing back and forth on that. There's the same bar that they go to, the same sights, sounds, even credit scene.
Right.
And I felt like at a certain point, like they could have let that go.
I also felt, I don't know if you'll agree with this, but I feel like the pacing of the first half was a little slow.
Yes,
also.
it was.
And I think it felt slow because of the reason you just said. Because I think they took that first half and they really stretched out the homage to the original just a touch longer than it needed to be.
Yeah.
And I think if they had condensed that, the first half of the movie would have been paced a little bit quicker and a little bit better, I guess.
Yeah. I would say my other critique is that there were like extraneous characters. So like Ed Harris plays his commander at the beginning of the movie, and you think that he's going to be his commander through the whole thing, and then John Hamm shows up.
Yeah. We're like, wait, what?
His love interest has a random daughter that I'm not really sure like why she was a part of it, and it's not that they even like had like a connection to the original that made you be like, oh yeah, he's back.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Iceman was back looking rough in his little...
Dude, Val Kilmer, what happened to you?
I know.
Was he ill?
He looks like... I don't know, but he looks like Mickey Rourke now.
Yeah, he does.
You know? So, he was looking pretty rough. He had a little cameo. I do think that probably, you know, Maverick had a good character arc, but... even though he is an asshole, I thought Miles Teller did a very great, very good job in this movie.
He did a great job. He's a really good actor.
He's not Goose, all right?
No,
he must have gotten his personality from Mama, from Meg Ryan,
right,
or something. Maverick did mention that, like, when he was younger, he tried to be the father that Goose, because Goose wasn't there, he tried to step up and, like, fill that role. Right. And so, like, it is kind of interesting that, like, he turned out to be so much like Maverick.
Yeah. And I also think the two of them had amazing chemistry.
Yeah, they did.
Especially towards the end.
Yeah. But there were a ton of characters. Like, it was a massive cast.
There were a lot of characters.
I'm not really sure why. But... I think the addition of Jennifer Connelly is something that we were both appreciative of.
Yeah, we were here for Jennifer Connelly.
I don't think I've ever seen somebody age that well.
I would say maybe for me, the only other person I feel like aged that well was Jennifer Aniston.
Or Cheryl Lee Ralph, who's in Abbott Elementary.
Yes.
She also is, I mean, she's like in her 70s and she looks
incredible.
55. So there are other people. I'm being very overdramatic here. But she looked amazing.
She aged so well.
Mm-hmm. I will say that if they cast somebody who wasn't as hot as Jennifer Connelly, I think I would have been annoyed with her character. But she
was a little bit of a wet blanket.
Yeah, but a pretty one.
But a beautiful wet blanket.
Yeah, a gorgeous wet blanket.
A hot wet blanket. A
51-year-old, steaming hot, fiery roasted
wet blanket. We've really sold her character.
I know. Now, that was the first half.
Okay.
The second half.
My heart rate is going up as I think about it.
I literally asked Caitlin a couple times in the theater what her heart rate is at. I asked her to check her Apple Watch.
I kept checking it too because I was like, okay, it's getting crazier and crazier, and maybe my heart rate's gonna like go up and up, which it definitely was increasing like right at the beginning.
Yeah. We are not going to give any spoilers
No.
whatsoever here. All I will say about the second half is that it was one of the best, probably I would say top 5 action sequences I have ever seen.
Mm-hmm. When I'm like, I know I said this already before, but when I say on the edge of your seat, like you are on the edge of your seat, like physically, literally, figuratively, like
mentally, emotionally.
Yes, the whole thing.
The entire thing was heart-stopping, and obviously the one spoiler that isn't a spoiler is that they're in planes and they're fighting.
Yeah, not a spoiler.
Not a spoiler. And so, you know, they end up on this mission and won't go into details of the mission or who's on it, but they're on this mission and I physically felt myself shifting in my seat. I had my feet up on the seat in front of me and I felt myself like pushing the seat in front of me and I was like, I'm going to fucking break this thing.
Yeah.
Like I was scared I was going to snap the seat in front of me.
I know. The tension was insane and it
so
was
good.
Truly, like you said, one of the craziest action sequences and also visually stunning action sequences I've ever seen.
And I think the thing that I appreciated about it was that even though, you know, there are some movies that like, you know something is coming and it makes you less scared or less anxious. Like you're just kind of like, oh, well, I know that's going to happen.
Right.
Like in a horror movie, when you know the final girl is going to get out. This one, you genuinely don't know who's going to be fine.
No.
But you can still predict some things.
Yeah.
And those predictions did not ease the tension at all.
No. I was not at rest until the movie ended.
You won't be at rest until you go to bed.
Truly. Like, I'm still not at rest.
Yeah.
Like, my resting heart rate is still elevated. Like,
it was crazy. I could have watched an entire movie of just that.
Yeah, but I feel like there was a point of why they didn't do that.
Yeah.
You know, like
they
really wanted to build that up for us. And I do think that the buildup of that was also partly what made it so crazy and so suspenseful. Because they really drug that whole thing about the mission on for a very long time. And you really didn't know like what was going to happen. Like you didn't know who was going to make it, if anyone was going to make it, you know, that whole thing.
Yeah.
And watching it, I mean, I don't think I've ever witnessed an action sequence where I was that on edge, but also so stunned.
Yeah.
And impressed by what was happening. I mean, there was literally a point where I almost said, what the fuck, out loud in the movie.
Well, I'm not kidding. At the end of the movie, after Lady Gaga just absolutely shredded our ears with her voice, which is a good thing, by the way.
Yeah, we love her.
It was actually great.
It was a really cool song.
This man in the back of the theater literally just goes, woo! woo!
Yeah.
But like loud. I'm like covering
Yeah.
my bike so I don't like blow
Yeah,
out
he
my
was like,
microphone.
woo!
Woo! Yeah.
It was like a high-pitched woo.
There were a couple people clapping. Like, it wasn't like
There were multiple times when people
This
clapped.
wasn't the opening night either. This opened last week. And I know that they probably are fans.
Right.
But us who are not fans and who just like really understood the story this weekend, I felt like clapping but didn't want to be like that guy.
Person.
Yeah. And so I understand why somebody would go woo and clap.
Sure, yeah. I felt that energy. Like especially when the credits were rolling, when the end credits were rolling, and like you said, Lady Gaga was singing, like, and just watching all of those action sequences and just the way that the movie ended, like, that you do feel that energy of, like, you want to do, like, a fist bump in the air.
Yeah.
And, like, you just want to go, like, America! Like, it's just, like...
I noticed, too, that they did what a lot of, like, older 90s and 80s movies do, where they use the audio to really build action and tension, where I think all of us have watched an 80s movie on Netflix and you're riding your volume button up and down. Their file was loud.
Yeah.
And it was great. Like,
it was great.
So great. And I do appreciate that even though the beginning of the movie was a little, like, a tad slower, the difference I think between the original and this one is that because they're not just like learning how to be pilots, but they're pilots already and they're learning how to do this mission, the stakes being so much higher made even that slow build way better than like the originals.
Oh yeah, because the originals, I mean, quote unquote mission of the original was like to see who was going to be the best pilot of their class.
Right.
And, like, we were talking about it on the way to the movie tonight. Like, the original, we never really even got to the part of, like, who the Navy was even fighting in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't even, like, an enemy.
Which is really funny because they didn't name an enemy in this one
either. They didn't name an enemy, but they at least had, like, a target and, like, a mission.
Yes.
And, like, there was Navy techie type stuff that they, like, showcased.
Yeah.
Which was also not in the original. Like, the original was just, like, we fly planes.
You know, them actually running a mission and not just doing, like, silly little dog fights in the air helped you understand what they were doing in the air.
Yes.
Because they've practiced this mission so many times that by the time you get to the mission, you understand what they're doing.
You understand what they're doing and you have a stake in it too.
Yes.
And you're rooting for them because you've seen them fail so many times during the practice that you're like, okay, like, we've got to see them pull this off.
There were times where I'm like, okay, you have to pull up 100 feet. You gotta get to these G's, like, because you've trained
been
with
there
them
the whole time.
Yeah, and I think that was just so. I don't know. I really appreciate it because a lot of action movies make you feel dumb.
Yeah.
Because they talk really fast and they're like, if we don't get the microchip in time, then, you know, he's gonna blow up and cyber blah blah blah. So we have to, you know, whatever. And you don't understand fully why they're doing what they're doing.
And they use, like, terms that you don't necessarily know.
They try to make you, like, a little dumb so they can get away with crazy stuff.
Right.
In this one, like, as they were doing their mission, you really and truly knew what step was next, how they needed to do it, and how they could fail. And that just was something that I, like, haven't seen in an action movie before, and I really, really, really loved it.
And you know what it kind of made me think of, and, like, the feeling that it kind of gave me was like watching a football game. I mean, even me, a person who barely knows anything about football, I don't know what specific plays need to happen, but I know, like, how many downs they need. I know how many yards they need, like, all of those things. And so you're really invested in them pulling that off. And so it was kind of a similar thing of, like, okay, you're rooting for them like it's your team. Like, you want them to pull off all those steps and you basically, like, get the touchdown. Like, accomplish the mission.
Right. Okay, so I know in my heart what you're about to say, but what size popcorn do you give this movie?
It's a large popcorn.
It's a large, yeah.
That was a cool fucking movie.
Yeah, it was. You know, Tom Cruise is an absolute madman. Just, I mean, you can see that he's crazy, and his smile, his eyes.
You can really see the crazy, but man, he looks good still.
He still looks great.
He looks great.
Oh my God, I forgot to talk about the football scene. So for fans of the original, you know the volleyball scene?
Yeah.
And there's a football scene.
They changed it and they did a football scene. It's a beach football scene. It was just wonderful.
That was gayer than
It was gayer than the volleyball scene for sure.
No.
You don't think?
The volleyball scene was way gayer. I'm saying it was gayer than the pride pin in Marvel.
Yes, much more outwardly gay than the tiny pride pin in Doctor Strange.
But please go see this movie in theaters. If you're a fan of action, if you're a fan of Top Gun, if you're a fan of just like really good, like blockbuster style, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I love movies like that where it's just about, you know, getting your heart rate up, and I just couldn't say enough good things about it.
The other reason why I personally think you need to see it in theaters is just for the audio levels in a theater. Like, you feel like you're gonna fucking take off in a plane.
You really do.
The sound in the theater was so loud.
It was so loud.
But it had to be.
Had to be. You literally do kind of feel like you're in a cockpit at some point. I mean, I was pressing the throttle on that front chair.
Full speed ahead.
Thank you guys so much for joining us this week. We just had an absolute blast seeing this movie, and I'm so glad that we decided to do an episode on it.
Yeah.
Speaking of episodes, next week there will not be a new episode. It is my birthday week and also our local pride. And we're just gonna take a little break. So we will see you next time on June 10th with a review of Jurassic World Domination.
Oh my god, I'm so excited.
The trailer was a lot of fun today. They played a new trailer today.
Speaking of new trailers, we had a whole new batch of trailers tonight.
It was
which
exciting.
Also just put me in such a good mood.
Right?
I was just like, oh my god, I love a new batch of trailers.
All right, guys, thank you so much, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks for joining us on the ride home.